Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Tonight's film is 1986's Entrails of a Virgin. This is part of Synapse's Asian Cult Cinema Collection. You can see written on the top right there. This is the cover. This is the back. There is a sorry, the lighting is not so hot, but you can see, just generally what we're dealing. Here we go. You even have a little booklet inside. Some pretty crazy imagery, and I think this thing is like kind of out of print or going out of print slowly. There is also a sequel to this film that I'll be reviewing in the near future on this YouTube page. This is Entrails of a Virgin, 1986's, directed by Gyra. He also wrote the film. This is I was gonna say about 70-minute film, about 73 minutes long, and this is a movie that really kind of showcases sexual photographers, nude photographers, and the models that pose for the photographers, and then meeting a horrific entity or person or being or something along the way. This is an extremely bizarre, twisted, disturbing, shocking type of film that utilizes, I would say, a very twisted and expertly disturbing combination of sex and violence. This is and even gore. This is a very kind of oppressive, troubling, avant-garde, experimental, crazy, weird, bizarre type of film that is only for the people that like their movies rough and disturbing and weird. Let's get into this film a little bit. Entrails of a Virgin. The style of this film is really not what you would expect for a film after the summary I possibly just gave you. This is a film that utilizes style and wild editing to like the utmost. The first like 15 minutes of the film, there is no linear storyline. There is no logical storyline. The cuts are rampant and crazy, cutting from seemingly 3 or 4 different things, and you're not exactly sure if it's happening, or is it just showcasing a previous time, a future time, something that's going on in somebody's mind, or is it happening at the same time, but how could that possibly be? So and then all of a sudden, after about 15 minutes of the film, it really starts to follow more of a linear type of flow. But even then, when the linear flow hits, the edits, specifically, I will say that I've never seen edits of violence quite like what is displayed in this film. They do not cut away from the violence. The violence is there. It's in your face. There's gore. But what they edit in also with that is quite bizarre, artistically bizarre, and weird, and thought-provoking. And almost seemingly random chaos. And that is something that really this film really has, is that kind of chaotic bent, especially in the beginning of the film. There is this chaos that it's just wild. You're not really prepared for the imagery and the way the imagery is shot, the angles. There are some very bizarre angles in this film. It really plays like an experimental avant-garde type of piece. There's very sleazy photography in this film, disturbingly sleazy angles and close-ups to show. And you have to understand something too, that for Asian cinema, anything went except for showing like the pubic hair region. So we have kind of, whenever you kind of get to that point, it gets foggy in that area on the screen. And this is the real cut of the film. That's the way it was. So at first it's kind of alarming. Like, what the hell's going on here? It's kind of weird. Like, why is that fogged out for the men and the women? But they can show butts, they can show breasts, they can show, anything else, even hands on top of the pubic area, but or heads there, but not the actual pubic area. So that's something that's really kind of an interesting vibe. But we're gonna get more into that in a couple minutes. Let's get to the music. The music is not what you would expect for this film at all either. You have this awesome, simple 80s horror, atmospheric, synthy score to this film. Electronic beat and rhythm, atmosphere, and a bit weird too, but very catchy and very misleading at times also, especially around in the first half of the film. Very misleading and disturbing in the way that it's used at times, but then also extremely atmospheric and very horror, like a very genre of horror, being used. And I kept thinking, man, they should release this on vinyl or CD, because or nowadays cassette too, because it's a really good synth score to this film. And there's a lot of sound design, like with wind and things like that. There are subtitles in this film, obviously. Okay. Now I want to talk about the sex and the violence in this film. The violence in this film is gory. It's insane. It's weird. You could sense that there was a low budget in this film, but let's just say they used that low budget very well, because the weirdness of some of the kills or of some of the violence in this film really kind of has a surreal quality to it. It doesn't, there's a surrealness above reality here, really, to be honest. And it's very disturbing. And the sex is violent. There's a Jane's Addiction song. Anyway, the sex is violent in this film. Very controlling, very rapish, men over women. But then there's even a female character that starts to take control in some bizarre fashion in this film, in a very disturbing way. She's one of my favorite characters in the film. But the women, for the most part, have a very submissive role here, a submissive role as the models to the photographers. And there's a very disturbingly bizarre, hilarious, but you want to hate yourself for possibly chuckling at all. There's like wrestling moves in here that are really like, what the hell am I watching? And it's very disturbing, actually. While it could be funny, it's also like disturbing in how it's being done. And it gets done later on as well. And we have, so the violence is disturbing and sometimes gory. And the sex is disturbing and sometimes explicit. I mean, you're not seeing any penetration, you're not seeing anything like that. You're not seeing real sex here. But I would say that this is the most explicit indirect or simulated sex you're gonna see. I mean, it's very explicitly done with the angles, the shots. You're even seeing, it's probably fake, but it's totally disgusting. You're even seeing a lot of male ejaculation in this film. You're seeing a lot of very explicit, twisted, kind of perverted sexual sequences in this film that are just, the tone, what's being implied, what's not being implied is very explicit in the way that it's done. And it's very troubling in a way. The sex sequences are longer in here, and they're troubling, and they're interesting, and they're weird, and are they erotic? There are angles and things that have a lot of the erotic sleaze vibe in here, definitely. But there's also kind of a darker tone to what's going on in the film sexually. So it's quite wild, and the film gets wilder and wilder and wilder as it goes on with the sex and the violence. And the film really becomes, whereas in like kind of the beginning of the film, it has a avant-garde experimental type of sexual film, like an erotic film, and then the film really becomes a horror film in many, obviously this is a very bizarre movie, so saying it's a horror film, this is a very bizarre sexual horror film that really is very unique. Very, very unique and very outlandish and very wild. And if you're used to underground Asian cinema like Ichi the Killer or any of the new stuff that's coming out, then this shall not surprise you, because Asian cinema can get wild, weird, really a kind of over the line, outlandish, crazy, and this film really has it. But the film really also has a very dark atmosphere, a surprisingly very atmospheric film, a very dark film that really gave me a horror vibe, especially the house that they're staying in and the fog. There's so much fog, and the fog is claustrophobic, especially when they're driving. The dialogue is very fetishistic. Is that the right word? Fetishistic and perverted. You have perverted things going on. Definitely fetish type behavior going on with smelling and panties and pubic hair and the vagina and wild 69 positions and all of this type of stuff. I mean, this is a really, really wild and pretty adult movie. Even though you're not seeing anything real going on, I would say this is definitely a case where it's like, whew, yeah, this one's pretty wild, folks. This is Entrails of a Virgin, not a version. Entrails of a Virgin. There it is, folks. It says it will tear your insides out. We see a guy on a hook right there. I don't know if you can see that, sorry, but there you go. He's up there and there's another hook there, and of course the girl's right there, and you're seeing her underwear and stuff like that, and there's definitely fetish type stuff going on in this film with panties and butts and even vaginas, even if they're kind of fogged out. There's an interview with the director on here that I cannot wait to watch, and there's even a booklet on the inside, like a small booklet on the film itself. So this is very, very interesting to me. This is Entrails of a Virgin. For those of you, if this sounds interesting to you, then go check this out from Synapse Films. If you are into the more, rough, crazy, wild Asian cinema, this one is for you. If you like horror, if you like erotic stuff, if you like weird, bizarre, fetishistic stuff, this is for you right here, folks. Entrails of a Virgin. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Please feel free to check out all my other reviews in this YouTube page, and please feel free to check out my own personal films at youtube.com/poopy diarrhea. Thank you, and good night.